Let's hit the button and see. Looks like we are live. We are ready to get rolling, ready to get into things. Now, one thing that might be a little different about the stream today is that at some point we're streaming a little bit later than what I normally do. Sometimes I might have to acquire a baby, but he is pretty chill, so should be fine, and maybe you'll get a cute baby on stream later. But hello, everyone. So my name is Gary. I'm a permanent DM, and I am the creator of the game All My Sty. And today we are going to have a chat with Bo, who played Keith, who is the Iconic Sorcerer. So we just finished a really long playtest campaign, so over 250 sessions being run over the course of just over a year. All of those sessions being run by me, so I could sort of, forced test the system, right, to make sure it was really ready to go. And one of the things that I did to kind of give a reward to the people who were playing quite a lot in the campaign was to let them know, if you made it to level 10, if you're the first character to make it to level 10 on a particular class, then your character would be the iconic blank, the iconic character for that class. So when you open up the rule book and you get to fighter, you would see Giles. If you get to warlord, you would see Chief. If you get to wizard, you would see Harland. And if you would open it up to sorcerer, you will see Keith, the iconic sorcerer. And it's just a way to make sure that the people know I really do appreciate them playing and all of their feedback that they've given me. I have hundreds of pages of feedback from the playtest and notes and things that I'm just still poring over after several months of continuing to work and debrief on the game. So it is my way of saying thanks. So I'm going to turn it over and say, Bo, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your gaming experience prior to joining All My Sty. And then we'll talk a little bit about who Keith is and what your experience was playing the sorcerer. So take it away, Bo.
Sure. Hi, I'm Bo. Chris being my actual name. Actually, in terms of game experience, I also haven't been gaming that long. If I started, I probably started off. I only been playing RPG. I think it was about like 3 months before I joined All My Sty. I think at that point I had gotten to a bunch of one shots, but I think the only like major campaign I got into was like I think around 10 session Worlds Without Numbers game, and an other OC game. I eventually fizzled out, but I think at that point I was still playing in it. Yeah, I mean, after I started, I didn't have that much gaming experience at that point. I was 25, so I'm not my place. I'm relatively young, right? I had decades of experience with a bunch of anything. But
Well, that's really cool. I didn't know that you had that. All My Sty was sort of near the beginning of your foray into tabletop. If looking at sort of what I felt like I had to explain to people, I would have assumed you were a seasoned veteran to tabletop gaming. So it's interesting to hear that you'd only been playing for 3 months before joining the campaign.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I did play a decent amount of big games, but I know some of the CRPG, like CRPGs, especially older ones, do have influence from D&D. So I might have at least in terms of mechanics, have a somewhat decent grasp of them, which might have contributed to that. But yeah, I mean, I really don't. I'm glad it came up as at least knowing what I'm doing for the most part.
Yeah, well, and I think part of that is, and this is something that is kind of a strength of the play style of West Marches. I'm always going to be here proselytizing the positive aspects of West Marches because I do genuinely think it is something that is worth experiencing if you have not gotten into a good game, gotten into a good community. But the idea that you can sort of go in as far as you want and you can sort of dig into the scenery, because my perception of you as a player in my campaign was someone who was asking questions and trying to understand and trying to kind of key into the mechanics and the world. And really, some people focus more on the mystery of the world and sort of the plot elements. And it's not that you didn't do that, but I felt like you were kind of in the, okay, how does this work? How do I really make sure that I understand exactly what's going on? And that came across really well. Again, I think that's probably why I assumed that you had quite a lot more experience because you picked up the game very quickly, and especially as someone, we were talking right before the stream got started. You're someone who had a level 10 or a level 11 sorcerer at the end. But you also had like a pretty decently high level fighter as well. So you had, two pretty high level characters by the time we got to the end of the campaign. So yeah, it was interesting to see that someone got a good bit of experience out of it. So what I wanted to ask you, and what was kind of the idea of the stream tonight, also hello folks in the stream. One of the things that I wanted to do was talk to you about your experience playing sorcerer, and kind of introduce yourself. Who was Keith during the campaign? What was sort of big about them? I know for some people, if they can see on the stream over here, they will see this as a character with a giant shield. And I feel like in a lot of games, the idea of I am wearing a massive heavy shield and I am a sorcerer are not often concepts that go together. So introduce to me, who is Keith? What was Keith about?
I saw him as like a kind of, not necessarily a very smart guy, but I'm more like confident, self-assured guy. Also kind of like also a lot of it was, I think, being decently being a decent, in great shape, because especially for a sorcerer, he had like, I think, good strengths and good con, to the point where like, I think, the penalties for shields and stuff were like, I think maybe by third level I had him at 13, so I think it was just a -5 movement. So for him, he was actually strong enough to wield a shield with no problem, which especially for a sorcerer was when he had like a D4 HP, that can really help.
Yeah. Which is interesting because having 13 strength and 13 constitution means that not only are you able to use a heavy shield effectively, but it also means that you qualify as being a barbarian. So in All Mice Die, there are minimum requirements for all of the different classes, and generally speaking, it's 13 and 1 or 2 skills. For the people we've talked to already, so the fighter takes at least 13 strength, but no other stat. The wizard takes 13 int, no other stat. The warlord takes 13 charisma, does not take any other stat. But the sorcerer takes 13 charisma and 13 dexterity. And since you also had 13 strength and 13 con, means you had a character who was sort of rolled as a superhero, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think he was, correctly, he was one of the best characters I rolled in terms of stats.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he was pretty good. Well, his intelligence, I think, was middling 10, which I think is still good, especially for like non-main stat. Having no penalties was a pretty good roll.
Yeah, we had a guardian that played in the campaign for a while who had a wisdom of 3. She was a little easy to fool because of that. Very, very non-perceptive, did not pick up things. So having your I'm not very intelligent, I've only got a 10, means that you're still rocking some pretty solid stats, even if they're not your strengths. So yeah, so we know, that was sorcerer, the being able to defend yourself, to protect yourself with your big shield, with your low hit points and things. Did you have like a certain mentality for things going into playing the sorcerer? Like, from my perspective, you played the sorcerer as someone who was able to basically go around with a gun in their pocket, but very rarely actually have to draw it out. You had the spells to cast, but Keith did not cast a ton of spells, if memory serves. So I was gonna say, what was your mentality when you were playing?
I think that was more just me being a bit too cautious. Thinking, if I cast it now, will I be able to save it later, rather than anything more of an intentional character choice. I think it just really cautious. Also, I think part of it was often we had the Harlan, the iconic wizard in the party, who had a lot more willpower, so he could easily cast spells. So I kind of often just found it easier to defer to him if we needed a spell, and then save my willpower when it was really needed.
Yeah. And in a lot of systems, there's going to be a discussion. I think that's a good segue for it, of what does it mean to be a different kind of spellcaster, right? If you have a system where you've got a like a fighting man or a warrior, and you've got a fighter and a paladin. You have all these different things. There is this idea of, all right, what's the difference between, say, a wizard and a sorcerer? Since you did play a good bit with the wizard, what did you feel was really the difference? What did it kind of experientially feel like was the actual difference between the wizard and the sorcerer? You said a little bit, but can we talk about that a little bit more?
I kind of felt that, like, I guess the sorcerer was much more of, I guess, focused, like, especially with damage or high-powered spell or like, casting spells when you needed to. I kind of having a more focused skill set, even with the lower skill points. While I feel the wizard was kind of the generalist, right? Like, they're often going to, like, maybe not on low levels, but on high levels, higher level, they're probably going to have a bunch of spells. They're going to have a lot of mastery. They're generally going to have a spell or something they can do. While the sorcerer is more going to be focused on doing, like, a particular thing very well, as opposed to the wizard, which is, I guess, the wizard is much more of a generalist, while sorcerer is kind of more of a specialist, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm curious. Sorcerer was also a class that changed a good bit through the playtest. So while we were playing, every couple of months, I would release a patch basically for the game. Hey, these are the rules that we're going to do. And there were some rules that I very much didn't change through the life of the campaign because I thought if they were really, really big changes, I didn't want people to feel like their time had kind of been wasted. So even if there were things that maybe were a little bit too strong or, really needed some heavy tweaking in the how things got done, I left those things alone. So a lot of them were fine-tuning pieces. But the Sorcerer got quite a bit of like real deal changes and stuff. Did you feel any of those changes? Did it seem like it was getting better to play as you went along? What was your experience with that?
I mean, I actually didn't feel it that much. I think the damage changes maybe I felt like so some of the skills and stuff. I mean I'm recalling wrong, but I think by the time a lot of them happened, I hadn't unlocked them or at least hadn't used like the abilities much. So I don't think I really felt like a huge change in how the sorcerer functioned.
Okay. And that's interesting. Yeah. We didn't really have, so the wizard, we had a iconic wizard. We also had Tisha, who had Scary Terry, who was a fairly high level wizard as well. For fighters, we had Teresa, which was Bo's fighter, who was pretty high level, and Giles, who was a high level fighter. So we had several high level characters of different classes, and we had, I want to say, at least 2 level 5-ish warlords, 5 or 6 warlords. But Sorcerer was a class that was, I don't want to say unpopular to say that people didn't like it, but it wasn't very chosen. It was sort of a niche pick for a class. Did you ever feel like, oh, I'm kind of the only one here? Like, did you ever feel like, oh, I'm if someone's going to need a sorcerer for the job, it's got to be me because you've got the only sorcerer?
I didn't think maybe during the high levels, but earlier on, like I don't think I'm not sure we planned in that. I don't recall ever getting the feeling that we needed specifically a sorcerer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like it's combat prowess. I mean, I think other spell guys are going to perform as well, but I feel like especially at low levels when you didn't have like all the bonuses, all the abilities, you could substitute a wizard without too much trouble, or if assuming you have other spellcasters like Harlan, you could probably a fighter or some other classes. I think would be decent substitutes. I never felt, except at high levels when I was like the only one. I never on lower levels it felt like I think you could take someone else and it wouldn't be a huge deal.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there should be in the game some amount of interchangeability, but I'm thinking at the moment about sort of the very, very end of the campaign where one of the adventurers basically got sort of warped around the idea of how can the entire party make it to where Keith is just able to keep Elemental Barrage up. That's all we want to do. We're warcasting Elemental Barrage, and how can we keep do everything else so that Keith can just keep bringing the death? I was going to ask you, did that feel like there was a lot of pressure on you? Did it feel kind of like a sort of a climactic moment for that character? Because it was, the end of that sort of campaign, or that end of that arc in the campaign, a lot of the focus ended up being on you for the last session or two.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say it felt climactic, but I'm not. I don't know, and I think some of it's, I felt some of the tension on me, but it felt. I guess in my headspace, I was kind of more thinking about not necessarily just the party, and then just keeping it together as a whole. I guess winning the fight and all that, and at that point, so I guess I did feel some pressure, but I was always kind of. I think I was just feeling the pressure even before that, right? Of just trying to at least, if not win, make it out alive.
Mm-hmm.
That mentality. So.
Yeah, it was. So for the campaign, there were a bunch of sort of bigger story arcs that people got really invested in, where they said, okay, this is something that we're going to contribute to. So for one of the groups was very heavily invested in dealing with the weasels. There was another sort of subgroup that was very heavily invested in dealing with the Formians, although there was a good bit of overlap between those two. Formians are ant people, and then there was like the group that was more invested in like the squirrels, and then some other bigger missions, right? So there's a lot of these sort of quest lines and stuff that people can go into, and what gets focused on mostly depends on what people decide they care about, right? It's designed to be very sandbox like. They can sort of dig into the scenery in whatever way they find is the most closely aligned with their motivations. But the climactic part for a lot of the online players was this sort of war between the baronies of the Weasel Lord and the Formian hive, and then sort of the mice kind of getting in the middle and causing problems. And for me as the person who is running and balancing the game and looking at things, nothing was clearer on my notes that I was like, oh, I think the damage output on our spellcasters, I've turned the dial. There's a bunch of little pieces that I can sort of change and tweak, and I've been fiddling with them in the background. I think I have this specific set of settings being too much of a force multiplier on each other, and then the big bad steps onto the scene. Hey, I'm going to cause a problem, and Keith does like several thousand points of damage to her before she gets to act, I think, if memory serves. I don't know if you remember how much those barrages were doing, but it was a lot.
No, I don't. Yeah. Even before was the. Remember when we were fighting? When I guess we were trying to free the mouse ladies and the weasels. I think I think I killed like basically all of them. I think I got to cleave like 2 of the lords, and I just did all the barrage, and I basically killed basically all the rest. I think we're like 7, 10, something left.
I remember there being a turning point between people who knew that you were there, and kind of there was this sort of implied threat that people knew that the sorcerer could do a lot of damage, but it felt like you never had to put up the thing like, okay, now it's game time. And then near the end of the campaign, there were several instances where it's like, okay, no, we're going to go on a mission, and it is going to be game time, right? Chekhov's gun has been on the table for 8 months. Now I'm going to pick it up and start blasting. And I feel like from the perspective of people and from the feedback that I got from people, it immediately went from, we kind of know the sorcerer is quite strong and can really lay down the law when it comes to dealing damage. And then all of a sudden a feedback of getting, hey, wait a minute. He's just nuking the entire game. So I don't know. That was interesting to see. So I'm going to catch up on chat a little bit. So Node talks a little bit about base stats aren't everything. Yeah, the Barbarian started with something like a base total of 63 and still made it to 11. So 63 is not the worst. Right, that means that you're getting, you've got 6 stats. So 63 means that you're a little above 10 on each of the core stats, and a lot of it is 3d6 down the line with some changes made for your sort of focused stat. But there were some people that were starting at much higher, and if you look in the rules, sort of, if you for whatever reason don't want to roll for stats, although I think is core to sort of the emergent play experience of the game to roll for stats, especially because you've got several different characters, right? If you roll and you're like, oh well, I don't really feel like playing a wizard, and this guy just has high int and nothing else. You have other characters to play. So, I really like that. But the idea of like, oh, well, how strong are these characters as they go? The base stat total of around 80 is where you're getting into this mouse is a superhero. And I feel like Keith was there, maybe not at character creation. I think you were mid 70s in the character creation, but you got there pretty quickly as we started leveling up into the 80s.
And like I said, I think Teresa all like having everything. I mean, she didn't make it iconic, but I think she was still my second best mouse, and I think she had pretty low stats. If I recall correctly, I think 60 something. But
yeah, I mean,
I don't.
And that is a point, right? The stats do make a difference in some ways, but they tend to make you better at what you're already good at or worse at what you're bad at. They don't tend to make you exclusively like, oh, now I have to be this way. And one of the few exceptions, actually, I think, is something like your sorcerers, something like the idea of looking at the way that the math works and the way that the campaign works and the system, and being like, I'm playing a sorcerer, but I look at heavy shield and I go, well, I just happen to meet all of these requirements. Maybe I should go with a heavy shield, and I'll be a little bit slower. But that just like you said earlier, that D4 hit points will only carry you so far, whereas having a big shield with 40, 80, 100 hit points on the shield can be like wearing 15 sorcerers on your arm worth of health. Yeah, Node said that the damage during that final thing was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,200 damage per casting. So it was a lot. That's not, like we're saying, the sorcerer gets D4 hit points per level, and you can't roll below your con mod when you roll. So if your con mod is +1 and you roll for your hit points per level and you roll a 1, you get to re-roll until it's something that's not a 1. If your con mod is +2, then you get to re-roll 1s and 2s so you get a 3 or a 4. But even with that sort of adjustment for helping you increase your averages, you're really not going to get that much as far as hit points are concerned. Your level, and I think if memory serves, your sorcerer had slightly less hit points than they potentially could have because you made a bargain. And you didn't get your hit points for level, I think, for one of the levels that you got from your big bargain.
Yeah, I think also as part of that, I also lowered my con. I think back to like the original amount, which I think somewhere around 13 might have actually been a bit lower. But I did have a few levels of HP, which I guess with the fight at the end there, it depends on who's the who we're fighting, but yeah, that's kind of a bit worrying. Although a couple hit points might not make a difference depending on what you're facing, but although I did get a lot out of that, I think got to break the stat cap on charisma, got bonus extra damage, got a lot of stuff to do those. I think get 22,000 points of damage.
Yeah, and so that is one of the things that in a game that is the style of play that All Might Dice is, you have this differentiation between what your sort of expected strength is, what you can sort of plan out according to the rules, and then what ends up happening, right? Like if you look at a character sheet of a standard, of a sorcerer, of like maybe what you predict you might want to do as a sorcerer, and then you pick up a character sheet for Keith, you might look at those two things and be like, these don't connect as much. Like they vaguely represent each other, but then you look at Keith and you see that his charisma is higher than the charisma cap. You look at some of his abilities and you're like, I don't know where these abilities are from, and it's because That is that emergent play thing, right? You get magic items as you go along, as you express yourself in the world, and also, for Keith in particular, he made a bargain. He made a bargain with a sort of magical entity that had some drawbacks. It had some boons. It had some banes. It was going to make certain things easier and make certain things a lot harder. And so you get these things where, one of the things I think would be fun is having these things included as the iconic example in the rulebook kind of puts forward the idea that, like, you're not going to have any normal experiences, right? The default example of this character is one that seems to be breaking the rules, because that's how it goes. You have a high risk, you get a high reward. I'll say, do you want to talk a little bit about that deal? Like, do you remember what the deal was? Do you remember who the deal was with?
Yeah, I think it was his name, Harvin card, the Raven. I think I was trading I had a before. I think we helped. I can't remember. I can't remember. What's his name? The water elemental we were trying. Storm Seas, right?
Yeah.
I think we had a mention free Storm Seas, and as a result, we got a some kind of reward binding to it from him, and as a sorcerer, I actually got have a unique one that would I think help me with a spell map. I forgot the specific terms of that because I don't think it that much, but I could trade essentially that binding to him in exchange for I don't think it was clear beforehand, but I think extra power and knowledge, which it would definitely paid off. So I think it's really, because especially if the campaign went on longer, it would be useful, because I didn't know we had spells that weren't discovered yet. I got out of that, which it was a longer campaign, would have definitely been nice to contribute.
Yeah. So the idea is the group found this powerful elemental that was bound, that was very unhappy with the way that it was bound, and then went on some quests, and all the people that contributed to the elemental being unbound got a little token, got something that said, hey, if you need me, here's my favor, here's a boon from me, right? So that idea again of going above and beyond maybe what it says on your character sheets. Typically you have things that don't look like they fit into the rule book. They are these things that are sort of unique rewards, and then him being able to take that unique reward and say, oh, I'm going to offer up the favor, offer up this sort of ephemeral connection with this thing, and give the Raven credit, right? So that the elemental believes that the Raven is the one that contributed to freeing them, that the benefit that you had from that just gets transferred over to the Raven, and then the Raven will give their benefit, right? So this idea that you can't just go home, craft the thing that you want that'll make it very cool. I want my +2 axe to be a +3 axe, go home and spend a certain amount of money to get it done. That's never going to, one, it's not really possible, but it's not going to compete with the power and the sort of excitement and the sort of progression of story and character that you get by interacting with the world, right? That you get by taking risks, by having ideas, by jumping into things and really seeing where it goes. And that is sort of core to All My Sty. People are saying you walk softly and carry a big shield. Yes, I think Keith did both those, because if memory serves, Keith was also expert or better in stealth, right? That was one of his things. Yeah. So he was very much walk softly.
Main things, yeah.
And then so I was going to ask you about this, because in a campaign and in a community that gets to be as big and as talkative and gets to be as sort of close knit as a West Marches campaign can get, I understand, as the person running the game, that there's a lot of side chats. There's a lot of side conversations. There's a lot of other nonsense that's going on that either, I'm just too busy to be able to read it all, or people were talking in DMs, because again, people are becoming friends and people have all these little side plats. I didn't know that that your house and Giles's house were planning on making Battleborn children. Is that a thing? Is that something you were going to try to have happen?
No, I thought I was doing that with I believe it wasn't that whether it was Fernand Franz. think.
I don't know. I saw, so someone said in chat, I weep for Giles and Teresa's unborn Battleborn children.
I think it was because Giles proposed at some point, but I just felt like at least from my idea of Teresa, and then kind of just proposed it didn't feel right, character-wise. I don't even think they might have met once, but I think, I did try to have Battleborn children with have Catherine, my optimist, have Battleborn children with Fernand. They did go out a bunch of times, knew each other better, and it felt more like a film equation that might work and make a bit more sense.
Mm-hmm. See, and I always find that so interesting. So the idea, for people that didn't see the other stream, the idea of Battleborn is that, kind of the noble families arranged marriage style thing, but the magic in the world reacts to drama. It reacts to these heroic or dastardly things that are happening, and that will infuse some part of that drama into either objects, or in this particular case, into children. You can if you go and you do an adventure and then the children are born that day, they can become Battleborn. They get these gifts, these inherent blessings as they are born, which can be very, very wild, very all over the place. So it's one of those things where everyone has their own opinion of that system. Some people say, that's not for me, and that's fine. And then some people say, oh, we're going to make sure that these two characters, these two mice, they would get along, right? They would belong together. Whereas other people are very much, this is the one that makes the most sense for my house, and the one that makes the most sense for your house. And I don't care if they've never met. This is how noble families work, right? We're giving you my best mouse and your best mouse, and we're doing these things together. So yeah, it was interesting for me to hear that was a side conversation, because I vaguely remember you saying something about Catherine potentially trying to have a litter of Battleborn mice, but I know we didn't get a chance to do anything with it before the end of the campaign.
Yeah, I know for sure I planned to do that with Carlin.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we get in, actually, I guess we can do that right now. Let's see. We talked a little bit, or said, hey, how a system shows a wizard is different, and a sorcerer different than whatever. That tends for me to be a good reason of thinking, okay, well, this tells me a little bit about how magic works. And, I kind of implied it a little bit earlier that the idea of the difference between a wizard and a sorcerer is your sorcerer has sort of fewer options, but they're heavier hitting options. They're more powerful pushes through. The wizard can cast tons and tons of things, and they can have quite a lot of effects, but their effects won't be quite as dramatic as what the sorcerer would do. And a lot of the little changes that I made during the campaign to the sorcerer were to promote that idea of, if they're going to cast their one spell for the adventure, or maybe one or two spells for the adventure, that they're going to get a lot of oomph out of it, right? It's going to have a lot of power. And when I did that for the campaign, I leaned into sort of the idea of damage being the thing that sorcerers did. They were kind of a blaster style character. And the impact that I saw from people playing the sorcerer and people reacting to the sorcerer is that it was sort of, it didn't feel like it matched the theme of the campaign very well, right? The idea, especially at low levels, is that you really don't want to fight if you can avoid it. If you can find a way to get the goods and get out without fighting, you've pretty much won, right? You want all of the reward with none of the risk. And since experience is based on what loot you bring back to town, what currency and what wealth you can acquire for your family, rather than what monsters you can kill, although sometimes the things are tangentially related, that does mean that you want to fight less. And having the sorcerer have a lot of fighting-based benefits to sort of show the way that they function ended up feeling a little shallow for me. So we changed some stuff, we added some skill stuff in, but even then, the sorcerer it doesn't have a lot of skill points, doesn't have a lot of skills. They can specialize and get a couple of good skills, but they're not going to have sort of the breadth of experience. So, Bo, I don't think I've talked to anyone yet about this, so I wanted to kind of tell you my plans for campaign 6, for what's become of the sorcerers since you've stopped playing them, and sort of get your take on it. See what you think. Think if you're kind of going in the right direction. If it still feels like sorcerer, if you'd rather see it look some other way. I definitely want to hear your feedback on it. So the sorcerer as a class, they need something at low levels to make them feel like they can just sort of spin off one spell, or they can use their spells and get the mastery that they need to make it less dangerous to cast. So the little bit of a change to the destructive spellcasting to be spellcasting that if it's something that you're not good at, you're going to be able to get ranks of aid, right? So it's sort of like your beginner's luck for the sorcerer. So if they can intuit their way through it, they're going to be a little bit better at the initial spellcast of stuff than they were otherwise. So it's replacing the idea that you get a benefit to spellcasting for damage spells. That is something you get later on, but it's pushed back in the leveling a little bit. And the new ability at low levels is being able to more easier wing a spell to do something your first time. And then the second part of the early level components for sorcerer is I really wanted to make the sort of oomph of the spells stronger as a sorcerer, right? The wizard is very versatile. They can cast a lot of spells. They are sort of the workhorse of the spellcasters, but the sorcerer's spells should be bam. They should be dramatic. They should have power. And in the old spell system, I didn't have a good way other than just changing your damage numbers to really show that. So the new thing that we're doing, new spell casting as it happens, you can upcast things. So in like a D&D style game, you might say, all right, well, I'm going to cast this first level spell as a third level spell or as a fifth level spell or etc., where you get extra like damage dice or an increased effect. That is built into every spell in All Might Die for campaign 6. So I'm curious what your take is. The two benefits that the sorcerer is going to be getting now is going to be they're better at casting spells that they're unfamiliar with. And so they're sort of the intuitive spellcaster. And then the second benefit is it's going to be easier for you. There's less penalties for being able to take a spell and supercharge it to make your one spell push extra hard. Does that feel sorcerer? Does that feel like Keith to you?
I think a lot of it had in my. I guess that's part of the way the system was in my mind was because I knew most of the sorcerer benefits focused more on damage. I kind of imagined him and played him a bit more as focusing on those spells. But yeah, I mean, I think it still feels sorcerer, but maybe not like Keith. But yeah, I also definitely think that would help, especially on the low levels. Since, like you said, I mean, you don't always want to get in a fight, and so having a reason to for the sorcerer to cast spells on low level, having some benefit there is probably going to be a lot nicer because on high levels, even if it is just damage, like I think you're going to get enough, especially since you can have time to prepare and stuff. There's a decent chance to get into situations where you're going to have a big fight, so extra damage is definitely going to be useful. But on low levels, there's never really a situation where you're like, hey, let's have a big fight. You don't have the resources and you don't have the levels, and yeah, I definitely think that'd definitely sort of feel a lot more, I guess, more versatile, more useful during low levels.
Well, that's my hope too. One of the things that I think will be interesting is the idea of having a spellcaster in campaign 5. If you are a relatively low level sorcerer, or let's say even you weren't a low level, let's say you were a sorcerer and you were encountering a spell, you had access to try to cast something that was several levels above you. That was really dangerous, and it was always really dangerous for a sorcerer. But for a wizard, they had enough of a buffer of their willpower that they could cast it, and they might flub it, they might fail, but it's not going to kill them, right? It's going to still work. It's just going to have a reduced effect. Whereas like the sorcerer, I remember there was one time you were around level 6 or level 7 where you cast a level like 7 or 8 spell, and the failing of casting it like drained all of your power and hurt you. And that was one of the first times like, oh, that's like a better version. Maybe it was the first time you cast Storm or Barrage. I don't know if you remember the thing that I'm talking about, but like that that thing where it's like, oh, the sorcerer should be able to do the same sort of thing that the wizard does, but do it differently. So the wizard has a bigger pool that oh yeah, I'm going to eat a big chunk of my pool in order to fail at something, and so I can get this higher level spell done. Whereas the wizard can do it that way. Having the sorcerer do it the reverse way is the plan. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that works, where if the sorcerer gets to a higher level spell, they can go, well, actually, I know the lower level version of that spell, so I can just supercharge the low level version and intuit my way through the high level version, where it's not going to, they're going to be very unlikely to fail. And if they do fail, they're going to pay the cost for failure of the lower level version of that spell. They sort of get, forwarded, they get fronted the difference in cost for upcasting a spell by saying, yeah, I can upcast the spell and make it overcharged and super powerful, because that's how I want the sorcerer to be. I want the sorcerer to have oomph, to be able to just say, yeah, I can cast that spell at 11 and just push it through. Some catch up in chat again as well. So someone says, so Node says, I will almost certainly be doing the arranged marriages instead of the emotional ones. I mean, again, that's the idea, right? Is if you want to engage with that system, everyone should have a different vibe, right? Some people are going to want to make sure that there is a story, the sort of love between my wife, between Chief and Emmy, was a big thing at the table, right? They had constant banter back and forth at the table about them being a couple. It was different for each of the different Battleborn things, and I think it's just kind of a fun dynamic to put on a community where there is this sort of, I think someone said earlier when we were talking about like a Sims element to the background, to the characters. And then someone said, if I play the campaign, or this must be Ferdinand. So if I play in the campaign during the summer, I will be likely basing my magic character off of someone I like in a book I'm reading. Cool. I hope you roll up a cool magic character. I like the emotional side effect of it, to characterize them, and then they die. Well, then you're probably going to find someone to play if they have an emotional arc and then they explode. Congratulations. The name of the game is All My Sty. And then Node says, hey, if you have problems, just roll well. That was some of the online solution to things was, if we roll poorly, everyone dies. 5-head, just roll well, and you don't have problems. And yeah, I don't know how I'm doing it, but I'm gonna cast this spell at a higher level. I think, there is this arcane theory behind what it means to have more power and the stabilization of the spells and stuff. But if you just pour a bunch of gas on the fire, it's a bigger fire. See, not that complicated, guys. Just do it. I think it'll be fun to have the. I think the idea of. And Keith was not dumb, right? He had average intelligence, but the idea of the spellcaster who does not need to think about it can be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like for Sorcerer. So I was going to ask you, Bo. I know you said your life is a little bit more busy as of late. Do you think you're going to be able to play in Campaign 6 this summer? Do you think you're going to be, there but less active? What are your thoughts for the next campaign?
I think I'm going to play probably. I might not be as active, but I'm definitely hoping to be able to play at least some.
Yeah, me too. I'm really hoping to see a lot of the icons return. Have you? I know you've been really busy. Have you seen that you'll be able to play? You'll be able to start off as a sorcerer in Campaign 6. Do you think you're going to be leaning into sorcerer again, or are you going to be going one of the other paths? Because I know you also played quite a lot of fighter and had several other characters. You had a brawler. One question: what was the character that got eaten at the very end of the campaign?
Oh, I think that was the demiurge I was trying to level up and get that. What was it? The sense get good use out of that sensor, but.
Oh, that's right. You had the magic sensor. and then you got eaten by the hawk. And then it was like, we're gonna go kill that hawk. And then unfortunately the campaign ended. It was one of the ones where it was just like, yeah, we're not gonna be able to wrap up every plot thread, regardless of when we end, right? We end after playing for a year, we end after playing for 10 years. And one of the best and worst things about a campaign is that there's always stuff to do and there's never infinite amounts of time to do things. But I think that's one of the ones that's high up there on the list of, man, I wish we could have played just a little bit longer so we could go get revenge on that damn hawk. It's good to hear that you're going to be playing. And if you find that you don't have enough time to play in the way that you want to, there are other ways to engage with the campaign, playing as the major houses and things like that. I think if you answered, maybe I was too in my own head about it. Did you answer whether you think you were going to try to go for Sorcerer again, or really going to try to lean into something else?
No, I honestly don't know. I mean, especially was the way I do enjoy kind of the brand nature, like I said, rolling for stats, kind of seeing what you get. Honestly, I don't think I have a huge preference. Like, I'd be fine. I don't have a huge desire to play any class more than any other. I mean, if I get to start off with Sorcerer, I'll probably have a Sorcerer, but, maybe I'll just this time get a really good Druid, or I don't think I have a particular, plan or anything like that.
Well, that's good. Yeah, there were definitely people that played who had really strong preferences for playing a specific class. Ferdinand would take out Harland almost every opportunity that he got the chance. Corey was always playing as Giles. Tisha played other characters quite a lot, but she tended to only mandate playing Chief when her wife was there. So that not as much. But I always felt like you were kind of, hey, I'll play whatever's fun. And I remember you ended up having several heroic characters, several characters that were level 4 or higher, just because you were sort of always willing to play the thing that was needed to be played, which I thought was really fun. Did you really find that aspect fit you really well? That you're like, hey, I can be the sort of Swiss Army mouse to play whatever was needed. Did you find that was a big draw for playing in the campaign?
Yeah, I think I really enjoyed the fact that you had a whole set of characters you could play. You weren't really stuck. You weren't ever really stuck to playing your sorcerer, because that was your only character. Yes, I guess some other people I think prioritize their characters, but I very much enjoyed being able to both providing play with having that variety of characters. Especially when you got say a magic item that would be good for that would be very good for a spellcaster or fight or the martial type. Having that variety of characters that can use it definitely I enjoy.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about magic items. For Keith, for our Iconic Sorcerer, what if you had to say this magic item was the one that I think about, or if you have more than one, by all means, but when you think about the story of Keith, is there a particular magic item that you think, this was very much part of his story?
Honestly, I never felt for him. I mean, there was a particular magic item. I think it's more just to take. I don't know how to say make do with what you have. I mean, the Fear Bell definitely was especially the way elemental barrage worked. +3 was definitely useful, but I don't think for him it was a huge I guess part of the sense of self. It was a very useful item, but I think he viewed more. I think his attitude was more these are tools and they definitely work well, but I didn't feel like a huge part of him, so to speak.
Yeah, it was interesting to me because that was also my experience, is that Keith had magic items. He had a toolbox of stuff to use, but I felt like when you were playing the game, your items and your sort of house stuff was a much more communal. than some other characters, because like, and I even remember I remember Teresa's magic items more than I remember Keith's magic items, because I remember you having the communal axe that you made that was even kind of leaning into that idea of like, I'm here to be part of the group, part of a community, leaning into the idea of the stable. So it's interesting that that's kind of what your opinion is, because another piece there is he mentioned the fear bell. So that was an item that wasn't created by his house. That was an item that they got as loot off of fighting against the armies of the Rat King. But you did improve it. Like, it got better. You know, they did heroic things with the items to make them stronger. But you had like a lot of the ones that I remember being like ones you created were the axe on Teresa, and then I think Teresa's feet melted at some point or got burned off.
Yeah.
And then
during the prophet fight.
During the prophet fight, yeah, fighting the prophet of the roach god. And yeah, now I remember that. Yeah, so your hands got melted and the silver got melted onto her paws, and so she had these sort of liquid magic silver gloves. As part of the way that you did things. Yeah, no, it was interesting, because I think everybody interacts with things differently. And someone just said it in chat. The fear bell reminds me of the dinner bell, and the party almost became dinner for that curse thing. I don't think Bo, you had an interaction with the dinner bell, but the dinner bell was definitely an impactful item for the people that used it, to be able to ring the bell and say, Let's see what happens if we hang ourselves up, put ourselves up on a silver platter and see who comes to dinner and see if we can fight them off. Was always kind of fun. Going back, someone said rogues didn't seem to. So sadly the rogues did not like her. Oh yeah, the rogues did not like Tisha. Tisha tried to play rogue and played a lot of rogues, but she had a succession of dead rogues. And had a cursed spear. Had a spear that was made magical from a rogue. Then the rogue died, and it was cursed. And then it kept kind of changing hands, and was very, very scary to use, even if it was not being used by a rogue, because it had the stink of a bunch of dead rogues on it. I don't remember. I remember you had a brawler and a fighter and a sorcerer and an alchemist. I don't think you had did you have a rogue?
Yeah, actually, I think it was later during the campaign. David, I think he also made it.
Oh yeah, no, I remember now. Yeah, you had.
He made a rogue.
Yeah, that was.
It was later edition, so I didn't really do all that much with them. But
I now that you mention, I do remember David. Rogue, just about everyone lost at least one rogue. That is true. People lost a lot of rogues. Rogues are, I mean, the thing about being a glass cannon in a world where everyone has a hammer is that the glass part of the cannon part is often very relevant. And I still want to say, note, I'm pretty sure the highest level rogue in the campaign was either yours or maybe he was a scout. Huh? What did you say?
Was it Trevor's or I don't.
Trevor's.
Trevor's.
Treasure's rogue.
I don't recall exactly the levels.
Maybe I don't remember. I don't remember who was the highest level, because I remember someone had Comeback had a high level character. I thought it was a rogue, and now that I'm thinking about it more, it might have been a scout, the one that became a demiurge. And then Treasure had a rogue that had a sad passing, because she had a rogue that died that passed the torch to somebody else, and then got a bunch of levels from passing the torch. Yeah, the rogue class is a hard one to get to high level, but they are very, very impactful on the sessions if they can find a way to stay alive. The fear bell reminds me of how my rogue died. Yep. Yeah, hiding behind shields helps with survivability. I believe that Keith is one of the people that would endorse hide behind your shield, because you get to live if the shield is between you and the enemy. So
Like I think I recall correctly, I think I didn't have any. I think David was the only rogue. Actually, I don't think I had rogue die. I know I had bad luck with I think warlocks. I think both of them died the first time I took them out. Sorry, warlords, not warlocks. Yeah, I don't know. I think I got lucky from that run. Those rogues. I'm pretty sure it was my first one and didn't actually die or suffer anything too bad.
Yeah, it's funny to me because I think Rogue had this sort of stigma to it, but I think it was mostly because we had Tisha who had several rogues that died. Radio, someone mentioned that Radio also played Rogue and had several rogues. Radio lost like 9 or 10 characters in her first few weeks of playing. And yes, some of them were rogues, but I think she just had a mountain of dead characters in general, and there were some rogues in the mound, rather than Rogue being especially vulnerable because of her characters. So someone else had said, yeah, so the group went through a lot of warlords too. That is true. But again, it was the, we talked about this in the other stream. It was sort of the difference in mentality between the online play and the offline play, right? The online play that says, let's just, fuck it, we ball. We'll figure it out. Somebody will live, and that will be the one that ends up being high level. Whereas the in-person, the offline group, they were very much on the idea of like, we want to make sure that our characters live. And if we're very careful with the characters, then it is more likely we will get someone at high level, which again then had the impact of you guys on the online group had just so many more magic items than the in-person players had. Especially, I mean, it somewhat evened out near the end, but at the beginning it was really heavily weighted to the online players for having magic items. And someone says, more that reminds me of my first character death, right into the death curtain and getting disintegrated. Yeah, the death curtain on the second level of the Tomb of the Barbarian Kings. I remember that as well. Looking through here. So yeah, so we talked about sort of magic and magic items and sort of spell casting and stuff and being able to return. I'm looking forward to you being able to play. One question I had for you, because I have talked, I've talked with Corey a bit, who played Giles. He's run games before. He's running his own campaign right now. I've talked to him a little bit about whether he'd be interested in running All Might's Die. Tisha, who plays the Iconic Warlord, she's going to be running All Might's Die at conventions, and hopefully will be, also be running in the campaign and Campaign 6 moving forward, because she's going to be running at, I want to say Gen Con. Maybe she's running at Origins. One of the two. We're going to be at Origins and at Gen Con. So she's running at one or both of those, and I'll be running at both of those. So, we have that. And then I know Ferdinand's going to be too busy really to potentially run stuff. But he had talked about being able to being interested in running. Do you have any interest in running games? Because I know you said you're still sort of consider yourself a newer player to TTRPGs. Has running games been something you've done at all, or something you're interested in doing?
I mean, I think I might be a bit interested in it. Just, I'm mostly just nervous, since it's, a lot more than playing a game, and you have a lot more responsibility. But I mean, but potentially, right? I think you mentioned you have you have multiple DMs. I think would be the idea. So, if I'm not floating as much as a load, then yeah, I think I might be interested in trying that out.
Yeah, I'm very much hoping that for Campaign 6 that we're going to have several DMs. I feel pretty confident that we're going to at least have 3 or 4 DMs for Campaign 4. Some people are more interested in, hey, I want to have my own little side world to run, right? They want their own area that's theirs to play in, which I'm all for. Some people want to be the generalist. That is kind of like, hey, I'll just run some little random one-shots. I'll run like little mini adventures and like random encounters, like treasure maps and clear the ways and things like that. Because that is, I feel like for some people it feels like it's a lot less pressure to run things that are that don't have an arc, that you don't have to worry about things between sessions. You can just sort of use some of the generative elements of the game and play. And then some people who are going to be working with me to build something that we're both going to be running. I will also say, and I don't remember if I've said this to you, so please take this. Hopefully, you will take this in the way that is intended, which is as a massive compliment. I used to play in a online campaign called the Guild Living campaign, and in that campaign, I made a ton of adventures that were designed to be easy for other DMs to run. Basically, not starter adventures, because they weren't. A lot of them were not low level, but idea of these are simple to run. This gives you all the tools that you need to run an adventure. You can run a one shot pretty easily and just read it for take 20 minutes to read the adventure, run the adventure, you're good to go. And the person who ran just an inordinate amount of those compared to everybody else, he maybe ran 10 of them to anyone else running one of them, was a guy named Han. And Han was awesome as a DM. I really liked him. He had he always acted like he had very low confidence, but he performed super well once he sort of got himself over the hump. And ever since you've joined the campaign, I've been like, man, I almost want to say that this is Han in disguise, because you're the way that you approach games, the perspective that you have, and even your voice and the way that you talk is very similar to him. So I say all that to say he did a great job of running those sessions once he sort of kind of got out of his head about it. And given that my experience with you is pretty one-to-one with you and Han, I feel like you would do an excellent job as well. So I hope that if it is something you want to do, that I can do what I can to provide the tools to make it feel like it is easy for you to do. I know that might have been a weird putting you in the spot, and I apologize.
No problem. It just, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, it was. Yeah, I feel like if you got some, I think it's something that simpler like 6 campaigns would definitely help. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hoping that we'll get to the point of, hey, let's sit down. If you have an idea for, this could be a cool treasure map, or this could be a cool one-shot locale or something like that you and I can work together, or I can give you the tools you need to build it your own and be able to run that. I will also say that Node and I are building a dungeon right now that is designed to be something that's going to be something the players will find fairly early on. Right, it's going to be physically close to the starting position for the game. So it's very unlikely that people are going to go a long time without finding it. And I think it is the coolest dungeon I've ever made. I don't even think it's particularly close. I think it's the coolest dungeon I've made, and it's really straining my ability to build something and make it easy to run and make it interesting and make it refreshable and renewable and revisitable. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm hoping that once we get to the sort of lead up to campaign 6, that I'll be able to do the same thing with other people, with you, to be like, hey, what do you want to run? What do you want to do? If you want to do a little one shots, you want to do, some interesting things to put on an encounter table, right? Even having let's make an encounter table that's just your table for running through some areas. And we can say the day that people are adventuring, they're using your table rather than using, one of the default tables or my tables. I think that would be a lot of fun.
The dungeon you mentioned, is like a mega dungeon like the Archway or something like that, or is it like a smaller type dungeon?
It is the goal of it is to be a dungeon that is big enough that you can treat it like the Archway, where you can go over and come back and back and back. I personally wouldn't consider the Archway a mega dungeon. I consider it like a full-fledged, larger, quote unquote normal dungeon. It's not a small 5-room dungeon. There are quite a few 5-room dungeons in the campaign. Things like the, ironically, the waterfall dungeon where your character got eaten by the hawk, and where you guys worked with Jas to get the silver armor, and that, and where you had the thing with the air elementals, that that was a 5-room dungeon, and they had Misogyny, where there was a 5-room dungeon. I think it was technically like 8 rooms, but it was designed to be done in like a single session or 2 sessions. This is going to be something that once Node and I get done with it, we can just sort of have that on the back burner, because I know you did a lot of stuff in the Archway. My purpose of the way that the Archway was designed was that once I had it all built, once I put all the prep into the Archway, if someone wanted to go in there, I could sort of relax. I didn't feel like I had to generate very much stuff. I could look at all the notes and stuff that I had done, and it was very easy for me to run. It was something that was always my default easy yes of like, hey, what do we want to do tonight? What do you guys want to do on next Tuesday or whatever? And if people said, oh, we have this idea, I might have to think about, okay, do I think I'll have any time to prep that? Well, do I have a busy day so I won't be in the right headspace to run it? The kind of other elements to it. But when it came to running the Archway, it was always yeah, we can run the Archway. And I'm hoping that's going to be the same thing for this dungeon I'm building with Node. And yeah, Node said the Misogyny was a 5-room dungeon. Also, that was not the name of the dungeon. That was just a hilarious title that someone said for their AAR that I loved. But yeah, so the idea is to have it be something that you can just run. And if you have an area that you run, it can be the same thing, right? Or if you have a set of treasure maps, the treasure map table has a bunch of stuff on it. So you can just, if you get bored or you get interested, you get inspired, you could either grab one of the treasure maps that's got a pretty succinct, like most of the treasure maps are about 2 pages long of how to run them, where they are, what you need for them. So you can both submit those to put them onto the table and grab one off the table, take 30 minutes and read it up and go, okay, I got what I need to do to go into it. It's supposed to be more piecemeal. Somebody asked in chat, question for spellcasters and spell discovery / mastery. So spell discovery is how they find new spells, because again, in All My Sty, the goal is exploration. They're learning. They're always looking out to go find new things, to discover stuff. So spell discovery is how you find there are new spells, and then mastery is your ability to get better at casting certain things. So once you cast a spell, you'll be more likely to cast it better the next time. It'll take less energy, more likely to have extra effects. What's the criteria to cast a spell, i.e. the level of reason you need to cast a spell and discover it and whatnot? So this is something I'm curious for your take on as well, Bo, what your thoughts are on this. Because I know you tended to, I don't want to say get handed spells, but I feel like for when you were playing, you were most known for your potions rather than crafting spells. Because you were the person that was like, we do not leave home without a potion of concealment.
Yeah, I think.
Good.
Yeah, like I said, I think for spells, I think I was a bit more cautious. I mean, they did put some amount of research into them, but especially with Keith, being more limited than Harlan and Harlan after being in the party, I think I didn't focus too much on spells. I had learning new spells or having too many of them. Though I did have a decent, I always had a decent amount in my back burner in case, like some floating discs. Maybe not elves or Roger early on, but like some elves will bowl some some offensive spells, but. Yeah, but I think for the actual criteria, I guess for spell discovery, I mean, technically you can't basically just cast any spell. I mean, and theoretically cast a spell at level 1. It's just the willpower cost is, especially for high level spells, is probably going to kill you.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're going to be doing here is I want to kind of tell you, I don't know if you watched the stream where I talked with Harland, but the way the spells will work moving forward is that rather than there being, you have to have the spell scroll that you have and needing the spell specifically, you're going to have these 18 words, and you need basically one of each of 3 columns. So there's 6 verbs, there are 6 power sources, and there are 6 manifestations. What our goal is, what we're drawing power from, and how it's expressing itself in the world. That's the idea of spellcasting, and then you get better at those words. So moving forward, one of the ways that's going to work for spellcasting is if you know, okay, this combination of verb, power, and manifestation, this is a slot, and then you can sort of say how much power you want to put into it. Okay, and in that connection, here we know this spell, but if we bump it up, we don't know what's in like the tier 2 version, or we don't know what's in the tier 3 version, or we might have a different idea for what might be adjacent to these three things, an idea that's slightly different. The goal is going to be, the DM is going to have on their side of the screen, and for the campaign, it's mostly going to be me that has this sort of checker box of saying, hey, we're casting a spell that's kind of like this. We have an idea of, I think, create plus fire plus chaos should make this style of effect. And so you will, as the player, if you don't know what's supposed to be there, you don't have a spell slot that's there, but you have a scroll with those 3 words on it, you can say, all right, I'm going to cast this. This is the impact. This is the spell I'm trying to have it do. This is the effect that I want. And then depending on how well you cast it, it might do the thing that you're hoping for. It might not. And when it does something that is either the thing you're hoping for, the thing you're going for, or not, you're going to understand a little bit more about what's in that spell, so you can get kind of better and better as you cast. Sort of, I think of it kind of like playing Battleship, right? You hit and you're like, nah, that's not quite right. Let's go over here. Let's hit. Not quite right, but I'm getting closer. And you can sort of narrow in onto that hidden spell by being creative, right? By expressing, I think this is roughly what this should do. And it also, to a certain extent, gives the people who are playing and the people who are running games the ability to say, you know what? I had an idea of what was supposed to be in that spell slot. However, the thing that is suggested by the players is actually very cool and very appropriate, and be able to dynamically add that, to be able to say, yeah, actually that does make a lot of sense, and it doesn't fit somewhere else in the network of spells. Let's use the spell creation rules and say, no, there wasn't a hidden spell there that you've now discovered. You've now cast it enough, and you've been efficient enough, and you've used the system well enough that you've made that spell, and you've made it your own.
I think that sounds cool. I did hear some of the earlier talk, not was Brennan, but I think earlier you talked about the specifics. I don't remember one, but the new spellcasting system. Yeah, like I said, that still sounds pretty neat.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm working with it on the design side has felt very rewarding, in a way that converting sort of standard D&D spells into the system of like changing the level and changing the effect and tweaking it a little bit. It was fun to do, but it didn't feel as like, oh, we're actually doing our own thing, right? I mean, very clearly, like I'm converting stuff from other systems to see how it fits in our game. Whereas saying, oh, this is how magic functions on like a baseline in-universe level. Okay, put myself into the mind of a spellcaster in this world. What would I do with these Lego blocks, right? What would I do when I put these pieces together? That has felt more fun, and I'm hoping for people that play, it'll feel more fun to be creative with it. Oh, good night, Ferdinand. Thank you for popping in. Thank you for joining in. Well, yeah, I wanted to kind of turn it over to you. I didn't have quite as much to go over with today, and we haven't had quite as many people kind of talking in the chat today as we've had on other days, which is partially my fault. So, apologies to the people watching the stream, and to you, Bo. I had you and Jason's thing scheduled, so one last night and then one tonight. And I wasn't able to do the thing with Jason. I had something else come up last night, and I thought I canceled Jason's stream and left yours up, and I don't know what I did. I just misclicked, right? And so I deleted this stream, and did not delete Jason's stream. And so I had a couple of people come to me like, where, what happened? Where's the stream? Which is cool to know that somebody cares, but also apologies. That was just a flub on my part. And hopefully I'll be able to talk with Jason this upcoming weekend if our schedules do end up lining up. But I didn't have as much to sort of chat about tonight. But I did want to turn it over to you and say, is there any questions you have either lingering from Campaign 5, anything about any of the classes, about the game, about anything that you wanted to ask about or anything you wanted to talk about?
I'd say I can't really think of much. I mean, I guess. Yeah, sorry, I didn't think I'd be able to talk about that well. I feel.
No worries. And yeah, my goal is not to put you on the spot and be like, hey, carry the weight of the stream on your back. I am out of things to talk about. I could talk about all kinds of stuff, but my brain is sort of stuck in response mode to some things as I'm working on building the new dungeon, working on trying to get the quick start adventure done because we've only got a month left until the Kickstarter starts, and then also still thinking really hard onto the response to the recent Matt Colville video. I don't know how many people are more in tune with the sort of D&D tuber dungeon mastering sort of culture thing, but Matt Colville is one of the big names in the space for a good reason, right? His Running the Game series is pretty foundational to the way a lot of people think about DMing. And he recently was talking about the idea of DMing styles being something that is not really well talked about. And that's taken up a lot of my brain space right now, being like, yeah, but man, it's a hard topic to really talk about. I put a little video on the channel, my thoughts about it, but I'm hoping to be able to come up with something that'll make it easier for people. Now, I think there is kind of one last thing I want to talk to you about, and then we'll probably end the stream there. For the other 3 icons, I know how I got them to join the campaign. Corey has played with me for years. He was in one of my campaigns that lasted. We had a 5-man band style campaign that went from level 1 to level 30. We played for almost 8 years, so over 7.5 years in that one campaign. He's been my player with me for a long time. Tisha just happened upon my table at like an open gaming table event, and Ferdinand in a similar situation, right? He found my stuff online and then found out that we actually do live like 15 minutes from each other. Probably more than that, 30 minutes from each other, but still very close to each other. I was going to ask you I don't remember how I recruited you into the campaign, and what made you give this campaign a chance? What made you give this a try? Because obviously you didn't know the game system and you didn't know me beforehand. But what actually got you to say, if you remember, what actually got you to say yes to join the campaign?
I think honestly, it was just, I think originally I found that both funny. And I mean, I don't know, I guess I just read the description and it sounded nice. I mean, I think part of it was, I guess I was kind of interested. I think you mentioned there was a smartest thing, which again, I haven't had any experience with that before. It sounded interesting, and also seemed something I could, if I didn't like it, it's something I could, leave without causing too much problems. Yeah, I think at that point I was more just, looking for some games, and I found one seemed interesting, and that it would be something I guess I could leave without, I guess it wouldn't require much commitment.
Okay.
I don't know, just I guess I can't think of it. I mean, I don't have that great memory.
See,
I guess
go ahead.
I guess it was kind of. I mean, part of it. I think I do remember kind of. I guess the more at least that. Yeah, you mentioned I think in the description, lethality, having it more be, I guess, having that more kind of risk aspect also seemed kind of interesting to me. But I think for the most part, it was just luck. I think.
Hey, I mean, that's the honest answer. Is it just hit you in the right mood, and you said, all right, well, I'll think I join. I'm really curious now because I try to explain West Marches to people. I try to get people to try West Marches pretty frequently. It is something that I'm obviously very passionate about. The idea that you can leave easily without feeling bad about it, I had never really thought about that, or at least I maybe if I haven't really like given it a good chunk of time. But I guess that is kind of true, right? If you're saying I will play with, we'll play on Saturday and I'll play with these, 3-4 other people, if there are 4 players total and you leave, well, you're kind of 1/4 of the players of the campaign that are stepping away. And that might put pressure on someone to stay even in a game that, they weren't really all that into, because they would feel bad about kind of letting their friends down, like or even there's people they don't know, right? Letting the other group members down if the campaign no longer functions without you. And I guess to a certain degree, having a campaign where, it is this sort of, many-headed Hydra where we only need a few people, from the overall roster to play, it sort of has that sort of unintended consequence of, we can jump in and play whenever we want, but that also means that we can leave and be inconspicuous, right? Like we can exit stage right, and we might get messages from someone says, hey, why'd you leave the campaign or something like that, but you're not going to have like 3 other people who are like, oh man, now that Bo is gone, we can't play at all, right? Like that idea that's like, well, we're kind of up shit creek without a paddle if this one person isn't there, and that has a nature of pressure. But that's an interesting thought. I think it's just not the way that I think about things, so it's not one that I consider yet. But I appreciate that as a thing, because I'm going to think about that a little bit more.
Oh, glad I gave it.
Huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I gave you something to think about.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. One of the reasons that I like doing these talks or streams with people, and not just on my channel, but like even just popping into a Discord channel where people are talking about game design or talking about running campaigns or like DMing spaces and things like that, is just hearing a perspective and being like, yeah, I think that that's true. Never even considered it, and be able to go, okay, well, is there a way I can sort of kind of use that explanation, use that reasoning to kind of help other people feel free to give it a try without like, hey, if you play and it doesn't work, there's no pressure to play again. Not just no one's holding a gun to your head to force you to come to the table, but also like if you do not play, you're not going to be taking away fun from other people, because we have plenty of players. Like a lot of West Marches games will kind of get to a critical mass, and people will come and go. I know we had a couple people that played a ton. One of which was the online group's Warlord, who played a lot, was very, very invested, and then his life just lifed. Like he had life happen and hit him really hard, and he couldn't play anymore. And really the only times that was a problem was when we didn't have that critical mass, right? Of people to be able to field sort of a higher level core for a while there. But it's good stuff to think about, to be like, if we can really get to that idea of, all right, we've got a stable enough base that, stepping out entirely isn't as big of a deal. You don't feel like you're letting anyone down, or even stepping out and being like, hey, guys, I've got exams coming up. I'm not going to be around for the next month. It doesn't have that same sort of weight to it. So I'll be thinking about that in the future. Well, good night to the people that are heading off. And Bo, thank you very much for sitting down and chatting with me. I do really appreciate it. And for those of you guys that are finding this stuff later, there will be links down below eventually for the Kickstarter for late backers, if we have late backer stuff, as well as to the Age of the Oak, the campaign that's going to be coming this summer of 2026. So we kind of talk with a little bit about what it was like to play the Iconic Sorcerer, and we might do another one of these for different people. We might try to get get a bit of the band together, get some of the icons all together in the same room, and or at least a cluster of them, and kind of like, all right, all the online icons. What did you guys? Let's get the group together and chat, or on the in-person icons, get them all together and chat a little bit. But hopefully, if you're watching this later, you have a little bit of an idea of why Sorcerer, why All My Style might be interesting, and hope you get a chance to join us. Bo, thanks again for talking with us.
Yeah, welcome.